If you're listening to this podcast right now, I want you to understand something. You are listening to Phillip Baker, Mr. Leadership.
And when I got to Texas Bible Institute in 1994, arrived at this ministry that was huge, that at the time was the largest camp in America, 19, 20,000 kids a summer. And then all of a sudden I'm given a Bible school and asked to run it. I knew I had to change. I knew I had to figure some things out.
You're listening to the Life in Action podcast, Faith, Finance, and Family. Here are your hosts, Mike and Phillip.
Welcome to another episode of Life in Action with Mike and Phillip. I am Mike Ruiz.
Hey, this is Phillip Baker.
It is great to be here. We have been enjoying the heck out of doing these live podcasts with each other. And we are together today once again, and we're actually going to talk to each other today.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is something we've been wanting to talk about for a while. Well, the Life in Action is all about faith, finances, family, but there is a subject matter that really connects with all three of those issues. And it's the subject of leadership, where, when it comes to business, you better know something about leadership. When it comes to family, you better know something about leadership. And when it comes to faith, church, ministry, building the kingdom, you better know something about leadership, right?
That's right. That's right. And right now in the world, we've got a lot of things going on. There's nations that are making big moves.
Right.
There's wars and rumors of wars, all kind of stuff going on. And it's all being ran by leaders, whether it's leaders that are visual or leaders that are behind the scenes. Things are happening. And so it's a good subject to talk about for our own personal lives, for leadership of our families, like you said, finances, our businesses, and all the three areas that we like to focus on.
That's it. And what we wanted to call this, and I think it's appropriate, is finding leadership. Because I'm going to be honest with you, when it comes to our ministry and all the things that we've done, being in full-time ministry since 1990, leadership didn't find me. I had to go find it. I had to go learn. I had to go read. I had to go trial and error. I had to learn by failure. I had to go find it. And we wanted to talk a little bit about that journey today, how you found leadership and all the things you do, how I found leadership. And then we just wanted to have some fun. We're going to do this in two episodes, part one, part two. We wanted to talk about some of the key, most important lessons that we've learned in leadership over the years, and just take some turns bouncing those off of each other. And I think it's going to be enjoyable. I think it's going to really share some things with you guys that have really changed our life, and we believe it'll change your life.
If you're listening to this podcast right now, I want you to understand something. You are listening to Phillip Baker, Mr. Leadership. He's in churches almost every weekend of the year, and he is talking about this subject every weekend to some church leadership team or some group of people that are wanting to become better leaders. And so I'm excited to hear what's about to come out of his mouth, because I'm telling you, the knowledge and the time this man has spent learning this subject is vast and very deep. He's dedicated his whole life. Would it be fair to say that? You've dedicated your life.
It's a big part of what we do
learning
in the
this subject.
churches, and doing leadership training seminars in churches for over 20 years, and then running a Bible school that the second year program was all about leadership, and doing that for 10 years. And so it may be something that I'm synonymous with, but it didn't start off that way. And so I really don't want to talk about everything we know. I want to go back first and tell you just how dumb and ignorant how things started, because I want to go back to our title, Finding Leadership. 1988, Laura and I, 87, we got married, and we moved to Tulsa, and we started going to Rhema Bible Training Center. And Mike, that was two of the most incredible years of my life. Being there at Rhema, sitting under Brother Hagin for 2 years every week, and all those classes and theology, doctrine, learning how to walk in love, live by faith, who you are in Christ, all those biblical truths that we really learned a lot about. But there wasn't anything taught about leadership. And I think probably in most Bible schools around the world, you don't really get taught a lot about leadership. And then when you jump over, let's say to high school, you look at college, how much is being really taught about leadership and people skills and how to delegate and all the things that we're going to be talking about. It's just, you just don't find it. You don't see it. I
Yeah.
came out of Bible school knowing the word of God in a very deep way, but when it came to people, when it came to leadership, when it had to function with bringing people together to do something big, it just wasn't taught. What about you? When you growing up, high school, all the things that
Yeah.
you were involved with, Bible school, how much do you think you really got a hold of?
Every week, we are giving away a free copy of Philip Baker's book on our Instagram. All you have to do to enter is follow our page. Head over to life_in_action on Instagram, give us a follow, and you are entered. Easy as that. Now, back to the show.
If you want to learn those principles, you've got to go do it yourself. You got to go take a Dale Carnegie course. You got to go take a class on leadership and all these extra skills. It's just like money. They don't teach money in school either. So if you want to learn money, you got to learn it yourself. And listening to this podcast is education on leadership.
That's
Look, I'm a believer that leaders, they always say leaders are born, they're not made. Well, I believe that a leader is born, but I also believe that a leader is also raised
yeah,
in a family or raised in an environment as a child and learns those by the people that are around them and by the influences that are put in their life. Because some people are just born leaders, some people are just born followers, and then there's some people who are born leaders, but they choose not to lead.
yeah,
And then there are some people who are born followers, but they have a desire to lead. And not that one's better than the other because they both need each other to make the world go
right.
round. But sometimes leadership is something that requires a bunch of time and effort and sacrifice that followers don't want to acquire or have to deal with. So they would just rather be
Yeah.
followers. Does that make sense?
Sure, sure. When I got out of Bible school, I don't know which one of those categories I fit into. I just know I didn't know a lot about bringing people together.
Mm.
And I blink, and in 1990, I become the youth pastor of a church. At the same time, I become the children's pastor of the church. Every Sunday morning, I'm with
Mm.
30, 40 kids. And Wednesday night, I am with 15 to 20 teenagers. And I knew the word, and I was teaching them the word, and I was loving on them and spending time with them, but I just didn't know about leadership. I didn't know how to build things. I didn't know about vision. I didn't know how to delegate. There was just so much I didn't know. And when I got to Texas Bible Institute in 1994 and arrived at this ministry that was huge, that at the time, even at the time, was the largest camp in
Yeah.
America, 19, 20,000 kids a summer. And then all of a sudden I'm given a Bible school and asked to run it. I knew I had to change. I knew I had to figure some things out. And I wanna do a shout out right now because it was at that time that all of right around that time, John Maxwell and all those books started coming out, and you
Mm.
actually had someone that was very prominent in the Christian world that began to teach us all about leadership. 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, and John
Yeah.
Maxwell started, and
Right.
I devoured that stuff, and then I was learning, watching Tommy and Rachel Birchfield and how they did things, and you learn from what people do good, you learn from what people do, not good, and I began to find leadership. And so what we wanna do now is we just wanna jump into some things that we learned that have stood the test of time over the years. And so are you ready? I know
Yeah.
you talked about how they're born, how they're raised, and how they gotta begin to learn and accept that responsibility. I think for me, one of the things that I figured out in those early years was the easiest thing in life to do. Here's my big first one. One of the easiest things in life to do, the easiest thing in life to do is to reproduce what you've seen. And so if you don't understand
Mm.
leadership, the things that we're about to talk about, more than likely you're just going to reproduce what you've seen in life. And that takes place in all
Right.
areas. Let's just talk money, finances. That's a part of life in action. If all you know is poverty, the easiest thing in life to do is to reproduce poverty. If all you know is a dysfunctional home,
Yeah.
family, the easiest thing for you to do in life is to reproduce all that dysfunction in your own family. And when it comes to faith, when it comes to church, when it comes to ministry, if all is something on a very small level, the easiest thing for you to do is to reproduce that. And I think for me,
Mm.
that's what I discovered. When I was a youth pastor,
Yeah.
Mike, we had 15 to 20 kids. And for 4 years, that's what I had. We had 15 to 20 kids. Well, you say, why? The reason was that was the youth group I came out of. When I was in youth group
Mm.
as a teenager, guess how many kids we had? 15 to 20 teenagers. So when I became a youth pastor, I didn't
Yeah.
understand leadership. So what did I do? I just reproduced the youth group I came out of because that's all I know.
Yeah.
And when you don't know, and you don't even know you don't know. So when it comes to life, it's a great question for all those that are listening to this podcast. How much of your life is just a reproduction of what you grew up with? What do you think, Mike? How does that hit you?
Oh, 100%. And that's the whole point I was trying to make about what you're raised around, what your environment is. You become a product of that
Right.
environment. But there's something inside of certain people, and this is the difference. There was something inside of you when you were in Bible, when you went to go run the Bible college, that said, I need leadership skills and knowledge. So I am going to do the things I need to do, read the books, watch the videos, do whatever I got to do, put the money out
Yeah.
to buy these books and to make the effort to educate myself. And that's the difference of the mindset of
Mm,
a leader is they're going to take charge. They're not going to wait around for people to do it for them. They're going to pursue that. And that's what makes that's to me, that's what the core of a leader is, that you've got to, there's something, it's a gift, I would say. There's a gift of leadership. And some people have it. And sadly, some people don't. And I know
mhm.
that the world's not fair and that things don't always go. It's possibly not everybody's born to be a
Yeah.
leader. And some people are going to wake up one day and realize, man, I don't want to make that effort to be a leader. I would just rather follow. It's easier, it's less risk. And it goes down to business as well. It's very true in business. There's a saying we say in business: is, do you want freedom or do you want security? There's two different
Yeah.
things. Freedom is being able to do what you want, when you want to do it, how you want to do it. Security is, I know that at the end of the day, there's someone always there to take care of me. I've got a 401k, I've got a pension, I've got this and that. The world we live in, security is going away because corporate America is not really caring about the average worker to give them security. And so freedom is something that a lot of people, especially leadership, they'll want to go after. And they recognize, they embrace the cost that it takes to
Yeah.
acquire
Pay the
that.
price. It's free, but it's not cheap.
It's free, but
You
it's
got
not
to
cheap.
learn some things. All right. What about you, Mike? I know you had said something to me that I thought was really interesting about leadership that I think meant a lot to you going back all those years. And it had something to do with this word ego. What were you talking about there?
Yeah. A, le- a leader has to check their ego, because when you're leading people, when you're leading groups of people, when you're leading projects, when you're leading things, there are going to be followers. There are going to be people who are taking your lead. And if you have a mentality and a mindset of my way or the highway, I'm the only one who knows what I'm doing, I'm the smartest guy in the room,
Mm,
then you're destined for
I've met
failure.
those people before,
Because a
Mike.
true leader is always,
Yeah.
yeah, I've been that guy
Yeah.
before. And what I've learned is that there's a lot of people in the room who are smarter than you.
Hmm.
They may not be leaders, but they're smarter than you. Henry Ford, the great automobile conglomerate manufacturer guru guy, he said, I'm not the smartest guy in the room, but I surround myself with people who are smarter than
Yeah.
me. So I don't have to be the smartest guy in the room. And that's really what a leader recognizes, is that there's always going to be somebody who's smarter than me. I'm going to check my ego. I'm going to listen to their ideas. I'm going to use their
Right.
ideas, because at the end of the day, whatever you're leading, whatever organization or group or project, you've got to be able to, if your best interest is that project, then those ideas, if they're better than yours, it's what you need to
Yeah.
do.
You're really talking about the value of relationships and a true leader. I've been doing it for years, but I have this friendship rant. Leaders are like elevators. Friends are like elevators. They either bring you up or they bring you down. When God wants to bless you, he puts someone in your life. When Satan wants to curse you, he puts someone in your life. How about this one?
Yeah.
Success is nothing more than a collection of great relationships. And you're not going to have
Yeah.
great relationships in
100%.
your life unless you check your ego. I
Yeah.
know Mike Murdoch had this
And
quote:
let's
"Show me your friends and I can see your future."
okay. 100%. Yeah. But let's bring this back to family. Let's bring this back to
Okay.
marriage. Husbands are typically the leaders of our families. And a lot of times in my family, my wife has better ideas. 90% of the time, my wife's ideas are better than mine. If we're going on vacation or we're going on a trip or we're doing anything, it's her. She has great
Right.
ideas. And if my ego got in the way and I was like, man, no, only my idea is the best idea, it typically doesn't work out well. And the same happens with my kids. Sometimes my kids get older, and I know you probably realize this too. They are very smart and they're smarter than us. And isn't that what we want? We want our kids to be smarter than
Right.
us and more successful than us. And everything we do in life is to make that happen. But a lot of times our egos get in the way, not just in finances, but in choices that they're making. And we sometimes look at them and go, well, I wouldn't do that. That's not the right way to do it. But it might be for
Yeah.
them. And so leading our families, talking about leadership and leading our families, we've got to be open and be teachable always. It's not something we do for a time in our life. It's something we're constantly doing. We're constantly becoming better leaders. And that's what you're teaching us. I was your student in Bible college and I learned so much about leadership. I was one of those second year leadership students and I learned so much about leadership. But when I got out, I had to learn to apply it and I had to learn to really get into a mindset of, do I want to be a leader or do I want to be a follower? And I had to educate myself and constantly be adding to it for the rest of my
Right.
life.
So we've got this massive subject called leadership. It's like a mountain, Mike. There's so many different sides and facets,
Hmm.
and you could spend your whole life on that mountain. You're not going to see all that
Yeah.
mountain. There's always something more to learn. And you and I, we started off not knowing a lot. We had it in us, but we didn't know a lot. And we started learning. We started learning because here's the thing, we didn't want to just reproduce in life what we grew up with. We wanted more. If you're out there listening,
Yeah.
you don't want your life just to be a reproduction of how you grew up. Now, if you grew up with everything was perfect and everything was great, then you owe somebody an incredible thank you. But for me, that
Yeah.
wasn't the case. And I just didn't want to reproduce what I had seen. I wanted to break out of that. I wanted to break out and
Yeah.
do more and see more and produce more. And so that's what leadership was to me. And part of that process is what you said. You got to check your ego. You got to be able to know that you
Mm.
don't know everything. You're going to have to listen. You're going to have to read. You're going to have to humble yourself and go after some things because it's going to affect your
Yeah.
family. It's going to affect your finances. But I wanted to just say something as we end this part one of this episode. I want to apply it to church for a moment. One of the analogies I've used for years inside local churches is we all see these fishing shows. You got hunting and fishing shows, and you'll see these guys out on a boat on a lake, and it's beautiful. They got these
Yeah.
big boats and they got all the rods and the reels and they got all this stuff and they're fishing and they'll catch this big 5, 6 pound bass and they pull it in, Mike, and boy, they're hooting and hollering and they hold the fish and they take pictures of it and the camera zooms in and they got this big smile on their face. But Mike, what do they do with that fish once they catch it? They throw it back in the water, right? Catch and release.
Yeah.
That's okay.
If they don't fill it with
Yeah,
lead
don't fill it with
first.
lead first. And that's okay for a fishing show. But sadly, that's what's happened in the church. We're good at catching the fish,
Mm.
but we're not good at keeping the fish. There's so many
Oh,
churches
that's good.
because they
Yeah.
don't understand leadership. People come to church, they get saved, they get their life changed. They have an encounter with God.
Yeah.
But then because there's no leadership in the church, there's no structure, there's no systems. They don't understand leadership. They wind up falling through the cracks.
Yeah.
They wind up jumping back in the water. And so one of the things we've
Mhm.
built our ministry on is the anointing builds the kingdom, but leadership builds the church. And I want to
Yeah.
so that's why we wanted to talk about this because yeah, it plays a factor in family. It's going to play a factor in business. But when it comes to the church, we have got to learn some things about leadership, because if we don't, then we'll just reproduce what we've seen. Think about it. The average church in America
Yeah.
is 60. That means, come on, over 60% of pastors came out of a church of 60. So the easiest thing for them to
Mhm.
do if they don't understand leadership is to reproduce a church of 60. And I know that's oversimplifying, but I want to
Yeah.
make my point. If you want to have a
Right.
great family, a great business, a great church slash ministry, you've got to learn something. You got to learn some things about leadership. And that means we've got to check our ego.
And just a quick point on that is you're talking about the church, but also talking from a business standpoint is we are constantly scanning, looking for the next leader, looking for the next general manager, looking for the next guy that's going to run, girl that's going to run everything. And you can't just hire employees and then they quit. It's you gotta find those ones that are good. And I know in church you're going after everybody, but in business, not everybody's that material, but you find them and then you want to invest in them, you want to grow them up, and then you want to hold on to
Right.
them. You want them to be something. So it's the same principle that can be applied over. But I have a
All right.
question, and we're going to do this on the next
Okay.
episode. And so if you're listening and you want to, it's a good question. I really want to hear your take on this question. I'm going to go ahead and ask the question and then I want to hear your answer on the next
Okay.
episode. We'll talk about it. But what are the attributes? What are the things that make a leader desirable to be followed? If you're listening to this and you're like, man, I want to be a great leader, but why would people want to follow you? What are the things that you got to
Right.
do to make yourself
Right.
followable and attractive? There's something, there's political leaders that we follow because of their charisma or their ideals or just different things. But what do we have to do to get people to follow us? Because it's great to be a leader, but if nobody follows you, then what's the answer to
Yeah.
that?
Someone once said, if you think you're a leader, turn around. If no one's following you, you're just out for a walk.
Yes.
So, part one to a close. We're
Yeah.
going to come back in part
And if
two and hit these attributes. We want to talk about the importance of having a servant's heart. And then we are also going to be talking about
Mhm.
what does vision mode mean? Because if you're going to be a great leader, you better know something about vision. And so that will be part two of this episode called Finding Leadership. Bring this thing home, Mike.
If you want to listen to part two, you definitely want to follow the podcast. So whatever platform you're listening to, just go down and hit follow the podcast. It's super simple. We're on Spotify. We're on Apple Podcasts. We're on every platform where podcasts are heard. So definitely, and please share this with somebody. If a pastor, a leader, a youth pastor, a children's pastor, somebody who would benefit from this episode, please send this episode to them and share it. We would really appreciate it. One last thing we're going to talk about, we're going to give away Philip's book, The Build. And so if you are a church leader, a pastor, anybody, you definitely need to get this book right here. So we're going to give it away here on our Instagram. And if all you got to do to enter to win the books we're giving away weekly is you just got to go to our Instagram, which is life_in_action, and just follow. That's it. It's the easiest contest to enter in the world. You just go and you follow. So go to our Instagram. The link is in the description as well. And we're going to go ahead and pick a winner. Let's go ahead and pick a winner right now. You want to
Let's do it. Let's do it.
All right. Give me a number between 1 and 80. And try to make it a low number for me.
All right. 32. Larry,
32.
number 32.
All right, let me see here. Okay, 32. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This is how we pick them, just so you know. I don't just randomly pick. So 32 is Sharon Thorne Meal. So we'll go ahead and post her up there and you have won. So congratulations to you, Sharon Meal.
All right.
Actually, no, Miss Sharon Meal. She's an awesome person. She will love it.
We just had a major denomination in America reach out and they bought 60 copies of the Build for all of their pastors in a certain region of America. And that was real cool. And we got those shipped out. And so all the pastors of Bulgaria that we do these Thrive Pastors retreats are getting the book. And it's a great book, real simple, but God's got more for it.
Awesome. And we're headed back to Bulgaria. We'll talk about that in the next episode, but we're headed back to Bulgaria and I'm super excited about that.
All right, brother. It was good.
Talk about some leaders over there. All right. Thank you so much for following along and listening. And we love you guys. We really do. All of our listeners, we love you so much and we appreciate you doing that. I know there's 1,000 podcasts out there, and the fact that you chose to listen to this, we really appreciate it. Especially all you guys up in Tulsa at Victory College. All listeners up there, we love you.
Follow our podcast for more great episodes and check us out on Instagram at lifein_action. Thank you for listening and live your life in action.